Luffy. Lost. No. Seriously, I don't think the One Piece community was mentally prepared for what Oda just did. For the last few chapters, we've watched Elbaf transform from the land of legends into an absolute nightmare. But chapter 1189 changed everything. The final page wasn't just another cliffhanger, it was a statement. The drums of liberation have gone silent. Luffy is pinned against the legendary Adam Tree. IMU stands above him, ready to finish the job. And for the first time in a very long time, it genuinely feels like our captain has no way out. Then, at the very last second, Scopper Gaban appears and blocks IMU's attack. But here's the craziest part. It wasn't Gaban's entrance that shocked me the most, it was IMU's reaction. That single panel feels like Oda is hiding an enormous secret. Why would the king of the world react like that after seeing one of Roger's former crewmates? What history connects these two? And more importantly, what happens next? Since Oda is on break this week, we don't have spoilers to answer these questions. So today, let's do what every One Piece fan has been doing since the chapter dropped. Let's predict chapter 1190. And trust me, some of these possibilities could completely change the final saga. Let's start with the biggest mystery of all. Is Luffy actually defeated? This isn't like Kaido knocking Luffy down in Wano. Back then, we always believed there was another chance. We knew Luffy would stand up again because Kaido wasn't the end of the story. But this time, the opponent is IMU, the mysterious ruler who has been pulling the strings of the world from the shadows for centuries. That's why this situation feels completely different. Luffy has already taken unimaginable damage. The drums of liberation have stopped. His body isn't moving. Even the giants watching the battle look completely helpless. Could Luffy simply be unconscious? Absolutely. Gear 5 has always pushed his body beyond its limits. Every transformation drains enormous stamina, and after fighting continuously while taking direct attacks from IMU, it's possible that Luffy has nothing left to give. Remember Wano. For a brief moment, everyone thought Luffy had lost. His heartbeat disappeared, until the drums of liberation echoed once again. Could Oda be creating a similar situation here? Maybe. But there's another possibility that's even darker. What if this defeat is meant to prove something? Think about it. Ever since the final saga began, Oda has been raising the stakes chapter after chapter. Egghead changed the balance of the world. The 5 elders entered the battlefield themselves. The God's Knights finally stepped into the spotlight. Now, the king of the world is personally fighting. If Luffy immediately gets back up, will the threat of IMU truly feel real? Maybe not. What if Oda wants us to experience complete hopelessness before Luffy rises again? Because that's exactly what happened at Sabaody. The crew couldn't win. No last-minute power-up, no miracle victory, only defeat. And that brings us to the biggest parallel in this entire battle. Back at Sabaody, when everything seemed lost, Silver's Rayleigh appeared. The Pirate King's right hand stood between Kizaru and the Straw Hats. Now fast forward to Elbaf. Luffy falls. IMU prepares the final attack, and standing in front of him is Scopper Gaban, the Pirate King's left hand. Tell me that isn't intentional. Oda rarely repeats scenes without a reason. He loves using parallels to show how history echoes across generations. But here's where things become even more interesting. Unlike Sabaody, this isn't the beginning of Luffy's journey. This is the final saga that changes everything. Because Gaban isn't simply here to buy time. He may already know this battle could cost him his life. Let's think about Gaban's actions throughout the Elbaf arc. He tested Luffy. He watched him carefully. And once he witnessed the Sun God awakening, he immediately placed his trust in him. That wasn't random. It felt like someone fulfilling a promise that began decades ago with Gol D. Roger. Roger's crew reached Laugh Tale. They discovered the truth, but they couldn't change the world. Now another generation has arrived. The generation Roger was waiting for. What if Gaban understands better than anyone that Luffy cannot die here? Because if Nika falls, the hope of the world falls with him. That's exactly why I believe Gaban isn't here to win. He's here to protect the future. Now, can Gaban actually fight IMU? I think the answer is yes, at least for a while. We've already seen that Gaban isn't an ordinary old man. Even after decades, he still possesses monstrous strength and overwhelming haki. He's one of the very few surviving members of Roger's legendary crew. And Oda has repeatedly portrayed those pirates as monsters who stood at the absolute peak of the era. If anyone besides the current generation can stand against the king of the world for even a short time, it's Scopper Gaban. But don't misunderstand. I don't think this will be an easy fight. In fact, I think this could become one of the most emotional battles of the entire final saga. Because this isn't just Gaban versus IMU. It's the last guardian of Roger's era standing against the ruler who has controlled history for centuries. A clash between inherited will and the Force trying to erase it. And that might be exactly why IMU looked so surprised. Not because Gaban is simply strong, but because Gaban may know something that almost nobody else in the world does. Something connected to Joy Boy. Something connected to the Void Century. Something Roger learned at Laugh Tale. If that's true, then Chapter 1190 might not begin with punches. It could begin with words. Words that finally reveal a piece of the greatest mystery in One Piece history. Imagine this for a second. The battlefield suddenly goes silent. Luffy is unconscious. The Straw Hats are desperately trying to reach their captain. The giant warriors are frozen in disbelief. And standing face to face are two men who represent completely different eras, Scopper Gaban and IMU. This isn't just another fight. This could be the first real conversation between someone who reached Laugh Tale and the ruler who has controlled the world from the shadows for over 800 years. Think about what that means. When Roger and his crew arrived at Laugh Tale, they uncovered the truth of the world. They learned the secrets of the Void Century, Joy Boy, the Ancient Kingdom, and the meaning behind the Will of D. Yet they chose not to act. Why? Because Roger himself admitted they were too early. But now, the world has reached the moment Roger was waiting for, and Gaban is standing right in front of the one person who knows the other side of that history. If Oda wants to deliver another massive lore reveal before the final war, this is the perfect opportunity. I wouldn't be surprised if IMU recognizes Gaban immediately and says something that sends the entire fandom into chaos. Imagine IMU mentioning Roger by name, or even Joy Boy, or revealing why the Roger pirates laughed on Laugh Tale. Just one sentence could completely change how we understand One Piece. But eventually, words won't be enough. The battle has to begin. Now here's where my biggest prediction comes in. I don't believe Gaban is meant to defeat IMU. As legendary as he is, Gaban belongs to Roger's generation. And One Piece has always been about the new generation surpassing the old. Whitebeard couldn't finish the story. Rayleigh couldn't change the world. Roger couldn't fulfill Joy Boy's promise. So I don't think Gaban will defeat the final villain either. Instead, his role is to buy the future one more chance. To protect Luffy long enough for destiny to continue. However, that doesn't mean Gaban can't injure IMU. If anyone from Roger's crew can force IMU to take the battle seriously, it's him. And this leads to another interesting possibility. Throughout the recent chapters, Oda has subtly hinted that IMU may not be able to remain on the battlefield forever. We've already seen signs that using this overwhelming power comes at some kind of cost. If that's true, then Gaban doesn't need to win. He simply has to survive long enough for IMU's limit to begin affecting the battle. That would completely change the situation in Elbaf. But let's prepare for the darkest outcome. What if Gaban loses? Not just loses. Dies. I know. Nobody wants to hear that, but this is the final saga. Oda himself has been raising the stakes higher than ever before. If the world's greatest enemy cannot kill important characters. Now, then when will that ever happen? Imagine Luffy finally opening his eyes, only to see the man who protected him lying on the ground after sacrificing everything. That single moment could permanently change Luffy. Until now, Luffy has always smiled in the face of impossible odds. But this battle feels different. This isn't just about becoming Pirate King anymore. It's about stopping the greatest evil the world has ever known. And that realization could become the emotional trigger leading into the final war. Now let's talk about Loki. A lot of fans believe Loki's role in Elbaf isn't over yet. And honestly, I agree. Oda has invested far too much into Loki's character for him to disappear during the arc's biggest battle. Even if he's badly injured, I wouldn't be surprised if he returns at the perfect moment to protect the people of Elbaf or create an opening that allows the Straw Hats to escape. Remember, this isn't only Luffy's battle, it's Elbaf's battle too. Then there's another wild card. Dragon. Now, before everyone starts saying, Dragon is definitely coming, let's slow down. There hasn't been any confirmation that Dragon is on his way. But if Elbaf truly becomes a massacre that threatens the balance of the entire world, The Revolutionary Army would have every reason to move. Would Oda choose this moment for the long-awaited father and son reunion? It's possible, but personally, I think it's still too early. If anyone saves Luffy right now, my money is still on Gaban and the people already fighting in Elbaf. And finally, let's talk about Luffy himself. How does he recover from this? Some fans believe the Atom Tree could somehow play a role. Others think Joy Boy's will or the Nika fruit still has another hidden secret waiting to awaken. And of course, there's the theory everyone keeps talking about. Gear 6. Now let's be clear. There is no confirmation that Gear 6 exists. But if Oda ever decides to take Luffy beyond Gear 5, it won't happen just because Luffy wants more power. It would happen because the story reaches a point where the Sun God must evolve once again to challenge the ruler of the world. Whether that comes now or much later, only Oda knows. But one thing feels certain after Chapter 1189. The final saga has entered a completely different level. The battles are bigger, the mysteries are deeper, and every single chapter now feels like it could change the history of One Piece forever. So here's my biggest prediction for Chapter 1190. Gaban stands between IMU and Luffy. Their confrontation begins with a shocking exchange about the past. A fierce battle follows. Gaban buys precious time for the next generation, and before the chapter ends, Oda leaves us with another cliffhanger that breaks the internet all over again. But that's just my theory. What do you think happens next? Will Gaban actually survive? Will IMU reveal another secret? Can Luffy stand back up? Or has the final saga just delivered the greatest defeat of his entire journey? Drop your predictions in the comments. I genuinely want to read every single one. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more One Piece theories every single week. Until next time, the sea never stops revealing its secrets.